Hey guys, this is Villains Demand. I'm Evan the Great. This is JVD. Today we bring you another episode of Behind the Mask.
And today we're talking about the leader of the X-Men, depending on what time you read your books. Cyclops, Scott Summer, also known by Slim, if you're a huge fan of Wolverine. Evan the Great, you're a big X-Men fan.
Yeah.
Where would you say Cyclops ranks on your favorite X-Men?
It's funny because I was thinking this last night. I love Cyclops. I like him a lot. He's definitely in my top 10. I don't know if he'd make my top 5. I'm going to say 6.
I hate Cyclops.
I know you did.
I can't stand
You know I like Cyclops. But I will say the writers made me hate Cyclops for about 5 years when they had him just be dumb and turn completely evil, and then AVX happened.
See, I like Cyclops after AVX.
I know, it's weird. And I didn't like him because I felt like he lost all the values I love.
He grew a set, and that's what he needed. And you could start to see that before Utopia, where he had the X-Force team, and they went after the Apocalypse, and was like going to kill Kid Apocalypse, whose name is Evan, oddly enough. So, but yeah, that's when I started to like Cyclops as a character. But for the most part, all the older X-Men stuff, man, never been a Cyclops guy. I always preferred Wolverine over Cyclops. And with Cyclops, I don't like Jean Grey either. So, but anyways, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Cyclops. Now, speaking of versions of Cyclops, at what time in the 616 we've liked Cyclops, we've decided that we're talking Cyclops. We're not doing post AVX. It's all pre AVX stuff because that's a Cyclops everybody knows. That's a Cyclops everybody is familiar with. So with that, we'll talk about the weaponry of Cyclops, and there's only really one thing. And it is the ruby quartz visor. And that's what he's known for.
Yep.
Controls his optic blast. It helps him control the width of the blast, how much energy comes out of it. Because Cyclops has a very crazy mutant power. With that, we'll just jump right in here to the optic blast. And I would say, besides Wolverine's adamantium claws, it is probably the second, probably equally with him, the best known thing for the X-Men. Wolverine's claws, Cyclops' blast.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very iconic. Especially for the time that it came out, because you really didn't, it was pretty fresh for superhero-wise, just the power. I have this massive blast that comes out of my eyes.
Power alone, I would agree with that. There's others that have a array of powers, like Storm, or, stuff like that, but as far as like this, a singular power is probably first or second behind adamantine claws.
Yeah, I would even say that it's, like I said, it's pretty up there with it. Because, I mean,
it may be the most powerful weapon the X-Men hold. Just some of the feats that I know he's done with it.
Yes. Now, I didn't really realize this until here recently, and I because like I said, I don't like the character. Did you know the optic blasts come from like a different dimension?
Yes.
I did not know that.
They're in Astonishing X-Men. I believe they talk about that when him and Emma are having a. It's weird. I think they make babies in their minds. I don't know how to explain that, but they have an intimate moment, and I think she discovers that and tells Scott that.
Really?
Yeah, I might be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that's where it comes from.
That's the Josh Whedon series, right? I've never read
Could be wrong. I'm going to look that up when we get done, but I remember them. I remember somebody saying that, and I think it came from her to Scott.
Yes, it's a heatless force, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. Yeah. It is not any type of heat. It's concussive force. It comes from an extra-dimensional apertures to a source of pure energy. He constantly absorbs ambient sunlight to his cells, metabolizing the energy in order to open the apertures. His mind generates a psionic field that is attuned to the same forces that maintain the apertures. The field envelops his body, protecting him from his own power. Even the thin membranes of Cyclops' eyelids are sufficient enough to block the emission of energy, allowing him to contain the power by simply closing his eyes.
Yep.
I did not know all that until maybe last year, and I was just blown away by it. That is how the optic blasts work, like where they come from, and it just kind of blew my mind. Because Cyclops wasn't a character I've never really read really deep into, like how his powers work, and I was just like, wow, that is pretty awesome.
Yeah, they're strong.
Yes, and speaking of, that's what we'll start talking about too next, because that is the one thing Cyclops is known for, is his optic blast. As we had said with the ruby quartz visor, he can control how thin the blast is, how wide the blast is, and honestly, there is no length to how far the blast goes. I mean,
No.
it's almost continuous. It's almost kind of like Goku's Kamehameha wave.
It is.
It's just a beam that comes until he closes his eyes, and it just goes.
There is a good example of watching how
Until it collides with something.
Yeah, watching how he shoots it and powerful it is. I looked this up last night because I love this book, and it's a great array of how Cyclops uses his blast in several different ways. Is X-Men Schism. He fights Wolverine, and I can't remember what it. Maybe towards the end of the issues.
Yeah, they're fighting on the beach with the Sentinel.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example of what he can do with his blast. Range, how fast they are, how long he can shoot, how powerful. He does about everything. He ricochets, he widens it, he shrinks it. He's a master.
Yes, and that's what we're all about to get to.
Yep.
They say that the blast of the optic blast, how the power is kind of unknown, but it's described as punching holes through mountains.
Yep.
He has actually blown the top of a mountain off for escape. He has pulverized adamantium.
Yep.
He has destroyed massive sentinels. Now, sentinels in Marvel are like a good 30, 40 foot tall. And one blast just literally will obliterate a sentinel. So, I mean, and the thing is, Cyclops, having morals, will not, depending on his opponent, will set his optic blast to a part that will knock them out, but he's not looking to completely pulverize them to mush with it.
Unless he fears his life.
Yes, which you'll do. And he has been shown to do that. Like you just mentioned the fight at the end of Schism with him and Wolverine. Wolverine is a guy he will go all out against because he knows Wolverine for one can take it.
Oh, and he does.
And he knows that's what's needed to beat Wolverine.
Yeah.
His optic blast can get pretty destructive. Now, what you have just talked about here recently, Cyclops basically has what's called spatial geometric awareness, which allows him to ricochet his shots virtually off of anything.
Yep.
And that with combined with his, and people would argue if he's a master martial artist, or I should say hand-to-hand combatant. I hate saying that he's a martial artist.
Yeah.
Or that combined, or if he's even an expert, combining the ricochet with his physical ability to fight people makes him very, very deadly.
He is.
He has his own fighting style based on ricocheting shots. And you could say it's probably as equal to fighting Captain America while he's got his shield bouncing around. I would even say it's probably greater.
They actually talk about that in a lot of these forums I've read.
Yes.
He can do what he do with his shield. He can do that with optic blast.
And this is the thing, where Captain America, say, in crossover collision, one of our battles is an alley, where he could just literally fling that shield and it just bounce around, and you have to not only fight him and the shield, Cyclops can blast and have 4 or 5 of those suckers bounce around. And the thing is, his own blast don't hurt him.
Yep.
He's immune to that energy. Him and his brother Havoc's. The optic blast is a very, very useful power. And it's probably very underpowered to most people until you start to read on it.
Yep.
For instance, his ability to ricochet. There's an issue of the Ultimates where someone has him, and I don't remember who it is. And Colossus is in front of him, and he blasts him with it, and it ricochets off his organic steel and hits the guy in the face.
Yep.
And he'll take a risk like that because Colossus is like, "Did you know that worked?" He said, "No." So he will take the risk if need be with ricocheting this optic blast. But he is so great at geometry. And he's actually incorporated it into his fighting. And when we do these, we try to break down the powers and fighting abilities separate here. But it's hard to a Cyclops because he incorporates so much into one thing.
Yeah.
And it's all centered around his optic blast. And this also gets into the fact that he's a master strategist.
Yes.
It is said that he is second to Cap. Nick Fury has said he's the best in a very intense situation. And he even thinks that the less he thinks about a situation, the better Cyclops is at figuring out how to get out of it. So that right there says a lot about Cyclops and his ability to think through in a fight.
Yep.
The one thing that I think about is during Fear itself, when the Juggernaut had become one of the worthy, and how he had like it's like 28 plans on how to stop the Juggernaut, and he was just thinking of them. And the book goes from like keeps jumping through each one of them as they're trying to slow him down as he's coming towards Utopia. So he is a master tactician. I might get hate for this. I would even say that he may be better than Captain America, just for the fact that how he fights with his optic blasts. The fact that it's ricocheting around and he knows exactly where these blasts are, he can still blast you. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty devastating.
As an X-Men fan, this may be biased. I love Captain America, but Cyclops is he is greater than him, and I think it's not because. I don't think it's just because he's Cyclops and his blast and he knows what's going on. A lot of it has to do with in the danger room.
His training.
He trains more. Captain America, there's difference with the way they train. He trains his body and his shield and his fighting style, but he don't have the Avengers out there doing a training session.
Well, here
they go out and fight stuff. It's global threats.
Okay,
but this guy fights every day with his troops.
Yeah, and the thing is, okay, when we talk about this, and I joke about it, how every character, especially your street level characters that don't rely on any type of super soldiers, they're always, they're physically peaked to their strength and their agility. You don't really think that when you think Cyclops, and he's never really described like that either. I mean, he's a very fit human being. He works out. I mean, he probably eats fat, but you don't see that. Oh, he knows all these fighting styles, and he's peak human shape. No, he's not. He's just a very well-shaped person. I mean, that relies heavily on how he fights and his optic blast.
Yeah.
And to me, I mean, and it's training in the danger room. I mean, he has the greatest training center anybody could ask for.
Yeah.
And the thing about Cyclops with being a master strategist, he fights the X-Men in there.
Yeah.
His programs are designed to fight the X-Men. He has learned how to blast a Nightcrawler out of the air when he is bantling. So, I mean, he not only just fights robots and whatnot, like you would see, like you see a lot of the X-Men fight Sentinels and whatnot. He practices fighting the other X-Men, so he knows them. So he is very adept at understanding how abilities work, and if you look at the X-Men, most X-Men have superpowers that are known throughout superhero history with other superheroes. So he's a master at learning a lot of that.
Yeah.
And knowing how to get past it. One thing also is Cyclops has rid himself of his one weakness, and that's his eyes.
Yeah.
He has become very, very adept to fighting people with his eyes closed.
Yep.
Because once the visor is off, his powers are going until he decides to close his eyes. So he's become very adept at relying on hearing to fight people when his eyes are closed. So in a sense, without having radar detection, he's almost like Daredevil.
Yeah, he's a lesser version of Daredevil.
Yes. And the thing is, I mean, if you knock his glasses off, because it's not like he runs around the visor all the time, and you think you have the advantage on a guy because, he's blind, I've knocked his glasses off, his eyes are closed. No. He's closing his eyes because he doesn't want to hurt you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's so good at fighting you with his eyes closed that he's disarmed gunmen with his eyes closed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and he's used to fighting X-Men with his eyes closed. So, I mean, to say you add all that in, is he a better strategist than Captain America? I think that he is. And I hate Cyclops.
I agree. And I love him.
Oh, man.
Well, I love him till AVX.
And that's when I really love the characters after AVX, because he started realizing that maybe Magneto was right. And then it turned into Cyclops was right. So, he is a master marksman, and when you have the ability to shoot blast out of your eyes, you have to be.
I would say that he is the closest thing to perfect aim as you can get.
Well, his power.
Yeah, wherever he's looking at, he's shooting, and he can ricochet stuff and tag you with it. So.
Yes. And the thing is, he's an expert marksman with his optic blast, and we're not talking guns or bows or anything. We're talking about optic blast here when we're saying expert, master marksman here. Yep. And that's short range and long range. Like, he's blasted planes thousands of feet in the air with his optic blast, and that, for one, that takes a lot of timing.
Yeah.
And it's no different from anybody shooting at you with, say, a sniper rifle, where they have to factor in wind and whatnot. So, I mean, that really says a lot about how well he is with these optic blasts. He's also has a great deal of mental resistance to like psionic and psychic attacks.
Yep.
Due to Jean Grey, Professor X, and Emma Frost.
Yep.
You cannot scan him psychically to learn things from him. He has psychic defenses placed up, so you cannot enter his mind. One thing I think of is the whole thing with them in the Century.
Yeah.
Where Emma Frost was like, yeah, you know, in the Century's head, Cyclops is like, put the void in my head. I can contain the void. So, I mean, that's due to, basically, I would say, 3 of the strongest telepaths in Marvel. You could easily say they're the top 3.
Yeah.
You know, just training with them. You know, you cannot get inside Cyclops' head, even unless he wants you to.
Yeah.
I mean, psychic attacks, unless they're a very strong psychic attack, he's going to hold up against it. And for what it's worth, he is a expert pilot from years of flying the Blackbird.
Yep.
So, Emma Gray, anything else you want to add here to Cyclops that you can think about?
No, not really. I mean, we nailed it. Unique fighting style.
I would say probably the most unique that
very tactical.
Find in comics. Yes, very tactical. Like the optic blast, ricocheting, and then going fisticuffs with you.
And there's a lot of people who, when they lose something, they're completely lost. He's not one of those.
No, his one weakness he has got rid of.
His weakness becomes a strength very quickly if they think they have the advantage.
Yes, and that's a very good tactic. Like we said, he's a master tactician. But that wraps up this episode of Behind the Mask over Cyclops, leader of the X-Men. For the Villains Man, I'm JVD.
I'm Evan the Great.
Keep reading, guys.
Na 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 na.